and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I thought I'd do a comparison between my H1 500 and my Suzuki T500R. They're both 1971. By the way, this was a suggestion of one of my viewers, if you like, someone who watches the channel. Thought it'd be a good idea to do a comparison, and I thought it was a good idea, so here we are. Yeah, so obviously very similar, apart from the fact that the H1 is a triple. Both 500cc two-strokes. I suppose the first and obvious thing is the Kawasaki is more powerful. 60 brake horsepower compared to 47 on the T500. So obviously that, contributes towards the speed. I think the top speed on this is about 105 and a claimed 120-ish on the H1. I don't think it's noticeably that much different. If you like, nowadays I just tend to stick to the speed limit, so it's hard to tell, the difference really. I think that comes in on higher revs. And on low revs they seem very similar. If you're just tootling around 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, then you're not going to notice much difference. I think above that, that's when that would fly off. So yeah, in a race obviously the H1 would win, but if you race these, the handling on these old two-strokes, well, four-strokes even, back in all bikes of that day, I should say, in the early 70s, the handling was never that good. The forks are quite spindly, and they're very similar, in fact almost identical, these forks. They've both got the chrome bottom piece here, and the fork seal screws in this bit unscrews, and then the fork seal goes in the top, and that's exactly the same. Obviously these have the gaiters, these don't, which looks nicer really. I mean they're nice, they're proper gaiters for the bike, the right one, genuine ones, but no, they're all right. But I think when I remember back in the day when fork shrouds, covers that were going over here, and gaiters were disappearing, and they had open stanchions like that, and I did think how much better it looked. Obviously you get more chance of fork pitting and stone chips and whatnot. Gaiters protect the forks. But yeah, so there's a lot of similarities. Both have very small headlights, and both 12-volt electrics, but the lights aren't brilliant. I don't want to change anything for modern, LEDs or anything, because that'd spoil them. I prefer to keep them standard really. Fuel economy on the two, very similar, probably worse on the H1. They were renowned for doing sort of 18 to the gallon if you thrashed them. I don't exactly know what this one does. I would imagine it's a bit better because it's not as highly tuned as, if you like. It's a bit more docile, but it's not going to be economical compared to a modern bike, that's for sure. I enjoy riding them both. I think this is slightly more comfortable. Could be mainly due to the higher bars, I suppose. I think the American ones had the high bars like this. I think the UK one had the flatter bars. This is a UK model, because it's points ignition. The American market will add electronic ignition. But I understand that in this country, because of I think it was compulsory to have compressor caps to stop interference on the TVs, and Kawasaki couldn't use suppressor caps with their electronic ignition system. That's what I was told. and no reason to disbelieve it. Why else would they have to have points on the UK model? But yes, points ignition. The American market one with the electronic ignition had your HT leads coming out here, sort of thing, whereas this doesn't. The coils are up under the tank. Yeah, so it's points ignition, which is better really, because I suppose if that electronic ignition was to fail, it could be very expensive to fix. I don't know, but I could imagine it would be. So points are straightforward, aren't they? You can fix them. If they go wrong, you can fix them. But yeah, comparison-wise, I think they're very similar. They're sort of similar looks in a lot of ways. You know, the mudguards on the Kawasaki are stainless steel, which is a good thing. Obviously, for people like us restoring them years later, stainless steel mudguards, you can get them like new again. In fact, this one had a graunch just here, scrape marks where someone had come off, and they always go, don't they? The mudguard always gets scraped just here. Funny enough, that one did as well, but I polished that out and got it re-chromed, so that's all right. But this one, it was just a case of using wet and dry, you know, 1200 wet and dry, and basically just polishing it out, and then Sol, you know, over that. Now it took a few hours, I must admit, but I managed to remove all the scratches. Of course, they don't rot. The usual place in the middle there. These don't, of course, because they're stainless steel, but front and back, which is a good thing. Chrome is all right now because it's not going to get used the same as it did back in the day. Used daily and all through the winter. It's not going to get that treatment again. Not a freshly restored bike, that's for sure. Actually, since my last video on this, I was talking about exhaust. I managed to get another set, a pair of pipes for this, silencers, I should say. A guy in the VJMC has got a T500 with Higgs speed expansion chambers, and he sold me his old pipes, and they're much better than what I had. The ones, well, they externally they don't look hugely different. These are better, but they're nice and shiny. The chrome is a bit dull in places where it's been polished so many times, but they're not rusty at all. And also, the baffle on the left-hand one I had before, the internal baffles, the ones where I think there's three sort of tunnels, if you like, what the baffle goes into. Well, they had come away inside, so they rattled about. If you got the exhaust like that, you could hear it rattling around. There's no way of getting it out. But these are in really good condition, so that's a plus. Whether or not, I mean, to get them 100%, I could have them chromed, of course, again, but I'm still in the same position. But they wouldn't need repairing, whereas the others would. They'd probably need splitting open to repair the baffle for a start. So anyway, yeah. So it's funny they've both got this thing where it looks as though you could change the gears to right-hand gear change, because obviously back in 1970, 71, you know, there's a lot of British bikes with right-hand gear change, and I suppose right-hand gear change it was only really the Japanese, I think, that started the trend of having the left-hand gear change. So every bike was right-hand gear change in early days, and people were used to that. So they gave you the option of switching it round. So this gear shaft goes right through and comes out just here. This is cut short. That's how it is. I assume you can get a kit, and the gear shaft could come out probably about that much more. And then you can add the gear lever this side, and also this part that's welded on the frame is also welded on the other side for the brake cable. And the Kawasaki is the same. That comes through on the other side. It does protrude enough to get a gear lever on. It's got a plastic cover over the gear shaft just to protect it and hide it, sort of thing. There doesn't seem to be any provision for to put the brake. I don't know how the brake, when it was put, if it was put on this side, how that works. But I'm assuming they must have done a kit for both of these models if you wanted to have right-hand gear change. I don't recall any. I've never seen it done. I'm assuming there is some out there. You know, let me know if you know of anyone who's ever done it. Yeah. To turn the lights on that one, it's on the ignition switch, which I sort of don't like really. I suppose, you know, if you're going along and it's starting to get dark, you've got to reach down here to turn it on. Whereas on this one, you can just turn it on the handlebar, like so. But on the other hand, that switching is better once the lights are on, because this one, it's high and low beam there, and then push it one more time and it's off. So you could accidentally turn your lights off if you're fiddling around trying to get dip beam when you're on high beam. It is a bit harder to push off. Obviously they've made it that way, and so you can flick between high and low beam quite easily, and then you need to push it just that bit harder to get it off. Whereas on the Kawasaki, the button, the high and low beams underneath, you just flick it like that, high and low, but you turn the lights on via the ignition switch. So once the lights are on, you know, that is a better, you can't accidentally turn the lights off, whereas you could on this. Funny enough, I lost one of these little plastic buttons, if you like, on the indicators. So I was riding along and I looked down. Well, no, I went to put the indicators on and I felt it a bit sharp, and I noticed the button had actually fell off because they screw up underneath. So that was a bit annoying, but I can't get, without buying a complete switch assembly. You know, there was one in America for $150 plus shipping, you can imagine, just for 2 plastic bits. It was ridiculous. But I made these out of aluminium, copied them exactly. It took me the best part of the day, but it was worth it because they're much stronger. Because, as I said, it was only that one I'd lost originally, and the top one then broke, just for plastics, you know, gets old and brittle. So I'd made 2, just copied them. But you know, you certainly wouldn't notice at a glance at all. They look exactly the same. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I think the brakes on the Kawasaki are a little bit better. The hub is slightly wider, I noticed. Probably the same size, but you know, they're drum brakes, obviously, both twin leading shoe. I noticed that one's on, the brake mechanism is on this side, on the right hand side, and on the Suzuki it's on the left. But they're both twin leading shoe. They're both adequate, but not brilliant, you know, compared to discs, anywhere near as good as discs. The back brakes are both good on both the bikes. I think they always made the back brake pretty good. And nowadays, everyone just uses the front brake, it seems. When I started riding, you was always taught to use the front and back together. And you need to on these. Yes, as I say, that is faster. But that doesn't really matter to me nowadays. There's no chance of me doing 120 on it, that's for sure. I think I've only ever done sort of 70, 80 on it at the most, and the same applies to this one. So that, you know, it just depends what you like. I mean, I think the Kawasaki is maybe a little bit nicer, prettier, if you like. Especially those 3 exhaust pipes, they look nice. But yeah, colour wise, I think the Kawasaki colour I like slightly better, but only slightly. Yeah, this is lovely, you know. It's always hard to decide which is the best one when I look at them. Yeah, the tyres I've got TT100s on the Kawasaki, and Avon Road Riders on the Suzuki. I think the Avons are better. These are quite an old design now, the TT100s. They look nice. They look the part, that's for sure. But I think these are less liable to sort of white lining and stuff like that. Handling wise, they're very similar. I think I prefer the handling on this for the speeds I do. As I said, I'm no speed merchant. You know, roundabouts and that, it goes in nice, and it almost feels like I could do what I used to do, you know, scrape the foot pegs, or I wouldn't want to do that now, but you know, that's how nice if you go into a roundabout, it feels like you could do that. And obviously that's only slow speed handling, it's not high speed handling. That's where it comes in, really, you know, a good handling bike. Yeah, so I think the Suzuki definitely feels better on slow speed handling than the Kawasaki. Feels like the front's a bit more like it's going to, you know, wash out or something, but this doesn't. I remember I had a GT500 in 1977, I think it was, and I always thought the handling on that was good. As I said, I can't vouch for high speed handling because I'm no high speed merchant, so I wouldn't know. I can imagine it weaving and all that stuff if you really go belting into bends at high speed, as I said. But yeah, I've restored both of these myself. This one, as you probably know, I've recently finished. That one I've had since 2011, so it's 13 years. I think I restored it, or started to restore it about 10 years ago. Probably, knowing me, only took less than a year, because I do get stuck in once I don't hang about. Get everything sent off and get the chroming sent off and stuff like that, so it's underway, because that's always the stuff that takes a while. I mean, the paint job on this, I think, was probably, was it 2 or 3 months? I can't remember. Fair while anyway. But yeah, so that's been restored, getting on for 10 years now. It still looks nice. I use it, you know. They all have to have their turn to get used. I do like the way Suzuki done this. As I say, both 1971. The Kawasaki has the screw type cap. It's quite heavy. I can imagine if you know, a bit clumsy, you could undo that, drop it on your paintwork. Can you imagine that? Be an expensive mistake. I've never done it, obviously, but you know, it could happen. Whereas this, you can't. You just flick it up, and you're not going to. Well, you could lose that as well. You know, I suppose you could forget to put it. I don't suppose that had happened, but you know what I mean. At a petrol station, like cars do it, didn't they? Used to, didn't they? Don't think they do it now. I used to see people had left their fuel cap on the pump and drove off without it. But I suppose it's less likely on a bike. You're more likely to notice it. Yeah, so they're both really good to start, I must say. I think all 2-strokes were good at starting. But yeah, this second kick, and that's pretty much the same. Maybe third kick on the Kawasaki. Depends when it was last used. I haven't used this one probably for about 3 weeks because I've been using this. So that might take a little bit longer, you know. But if you're using it daily, I would imagine it could even be first kick. The same with this, really. If you're using them a lot, they're always going to go quite quickly. As for the weight, I think they're very similar. They feel about the same. I don't exactly know what the weight is, but yeah, I think when I push them about around here, they feel about the same. Not too bad. The GT750 is a lot heavier. These are relatively light. As I get older, I tend to think that a 250 is what I need more of, because they're nice and light, to be honest. That might be something else. I'll do a review, a comparison between me GT250 and my YDS7 would be quite good. I was saying about the gear change earlier. On the Kawasaki, neutral's at the bottom, which is always odd. You never really get used to it, unless if you're using it regular, you know, every day for a week or something, you would get used to it. But it is odd, especially when you come to junctions, and you're trying to get down to first, and you think, am I in first now? And you give it one more click, and you look down, you're in neutral. You know, because obviously neutral at the bottom, so it's one neutral at the bottom and then up, 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 up. Whereas obviously this is 1 down and 4 up. Anyway, yeah, so yeah, I can see why they went away from that idea. But even on the later Kawasaki's, right up to sort of when they stopped them, I think the last ones were 1976, 75, 76. They were still using that, I think. Yeah, they were. They still have neutral at the bottom. It's quite handy sometimes if you stop at traffic lights. You know, you know that you've only got to go all the way down. But it's junctions where you just have a temporary stop and you just want to get down to first, and then you might not be in first. You're not actually looking at the neutral light. You know, you're not going anywhere. Clunk into gear. So, but I say you do get used to it if you're using it regular. But yeah, it's definitely better than 1 down and 4 up or whatever. It's definitely the way to go, and that's always been the case. I don't know any other bike apart from this that does that. I'm sure there are, but yeah, the Kawasaki's are probably worth more. I think, you know, these are sort of 10,000. I don't know if prices, I think, are coming down a bit on classics, to be honest. But for argument's sake, 10,000. This would be more, you know, 5,000 to 6,000, I suppose. But I mean, you do see them for 7. I mean, this one's really nice, of course. It should be 7, definitely. But yeah, the Kawasaki, these were when these people started really getting into restoring these old 70s Japanese bikes. These were really sought after. But there's so many restored ones now. You know, they're not as rare. There's plenty of them for sale if you went on eBay. There's plenty of both of them for sale on eBay now because so many have been restored. You know, and that's why all the spares have disappeared. Hard to get bits for them now. There's a place on eBay. The guy I know who's also got one of these just brought a front mudguard from Vietnam, and it does look nice. I think it was about £350. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere in that region. But yeah, they've done a good copy, to be honest, and it's worth that because you know, chroming could cost that on its own if you had a good one, good mudguard to chrome. And they do back mudguards. But yeah, I know people are a bit nervous of buying stuff like that from Vietnam. But yes, he said it was only a few weeks and it turned up and no problems, and he's happy with it. So yeah, he's now ordered a rear mudguard. So yeah, it's worth thinking about. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.